morning, good evening, good night, wherever or whoever you may be. I'm Alan Arante, and this is the Recluse podcast. Today's guest is Ricky Roberts III. He is the author of 8 books, including his latest, which is titled Thank You Skateboarding. He is a public speaker, a skateboarder, a surfer, a husband, and a father. And in this conversation, we discuss Ricky's early childhood and the experiences that shaped his development. He recounts his first day of school, having to lie about his black eye. He tells the story of being stabbed 9 times at 17 years old. And more importantly, he shares the tools that he has cultivated in adulthood that have helped him heal the wounded child within. In this conversation, we discuss his latest book, Thank You Skateboarding, and I would characterize that book as a love letter to skateboarding. I found myself nodding and smiling throughout the whole book because I could relate exactly to what he was saying. It's a book about the lessons he has learned from skateboarding, things that include perseverance and courage, getting back up, how to be a community member, and how to support your peers and to accept their support in return. He learned how to channel his negative and destructive feelings into something positive and productive. Ricky Roberts III has 8 books available on Amazon. I enjoyed this book in particular. So without further delay, this is a portrait of Ricky Roberts III. Your latest book, Thank You Skateboarding, I read that yesterday. I wanted to read your I don't know if they call it in book terms, but your discography, but I just didn't get the chance to. But Thank You Skateboarding was really great. I enjoyed it a lot. My first question for you is, how would you describe your childhood self? Were you angry, inventive, curious, timid? How would you describe yourself as a kid?
Well, first, thank you for reading the book, and I just appreciate your support and just and the opportunity to be on your show. So thank you for that. I my childhood was turbulent, and violent. It started off pretty crazy. I mean, some of my first memories are I blocked a lot out before 5 years old, but one of my first childhood memories is like on the way to school and having my mom tell me that if someone asked about, my black eye, tell them that I fell off my bike or whatever. And really the truth is that she gave me the black eye. So here I am at kindergarten, 5 years old, on the first day of school. I get dropped off at the front of the school by myself to walk up to school the first day, like this broken child with a black eye. So from there, I spent my childhood experiencing and witnessing violence on all levels, and then when I was like 12-ish, 11, 12, my dad left. He had some issues with drugs, and ultimately, one of the worst things was him being addicted to crack, and that impacted his life and his decisions a lot. He was just working through his own stuff and trying to figure out who he was in his mid to late 20s with 6 kids at that time, So I get like the chaos of it all, and he left, and then we went into some extreme poverty situations, and my mom went from one abusive relationship to another, and all these random dudes coming in and out of my life. And at some point, I remember hitting someone for the first time and like punching this kid in the face, and I hesitated for a long time before I did that. And then when I hit him, I felt like this, like, I don't know, man. It was just this weird sort of demented release that came over me, that I could kind of express my pain that I was experiencing onto someone else, and in some weird way it made me feel less alone in that moment. So I started to fight a lot, and at the same time I connected with skateboarding, fell in love with skateboarding, and that was that thing that really chipped the edge off of the anger and hostility and depression I was carrying at that time to help me stay somewhat mentally sane, and there's things evolved from there, and it just goes on and on. I experienced a lot of violence and abuse and poverty on all types of levels and some pretty extreme times. And to make a long story short, my like changing moment, I went through adolescence and late adolescence skateboarding and having that outlet in my art, and I was starting to journal a bit at that time as well. And on the other side of it, I was angry and broken and just looking for opportunities to fight so I could hurt someone else. Never that that's ever the answer or wrong, because every time I did it, I walked away feeling worse than I did before I started the interaction with violence. So in no way do I ever think that it was right, in the way that I was choosing to be at that time. And
Wow.
eventually it ended up, that path ended up me getting in a street fight at 17 that resulted in me in being stabbed 9 times, and that really pushed me to my comfort zones or past my comfort zones of trying to address the pain that I felt internally and start transforming myself and my life and my outlook from there on out. And it's an
Oh my
ongoing
goodness.
process. It's an ongoing process. Still to this day, I'm always looking how I can better understand myself and my faults and my pains, my insecurities, and just develop and grow as an individual the best I can.
Wow. There is, and it's so fascinating to hear you explain and describe your upbringing. It just sort of triggers my mind, and it reminds me of how I grew up and the things that still stick with me and the things that still hurt and the things that I feel like I've recovered from. Um, so I want to go back to, you said something very interesting about your experience of your first day of school in kindergarten. That you look at TV and you see how it should be, right? Should is
Yeah.
a I don't know that should is the right word, but in pop culture we see the
What you
parents,
think it's like, what you think other people's worlds are like, that you
right?
feel like your world is so far away from that. And it's
So
very taxing on your esteem and your well being.
I mean, you were alone and injured, frankly, on this this huge day for you. It's the first day of school. So even as early as that, did you have to develop defense mechanisms? Did you become like a really great liar? Because you said your mom said, "Hey, say you fell off your bike." So from a very early age, you're having to cover these holes with lies. Did you
Mm.
develop interesting defense mechanisms in your childhood to sort of relieve this pain and to keep people off your trail?
Oh, man. Absolutely. In so many different ways and in different aspects of that. Now, just kind of different sides of it. The lying aspect, yeah, in my mind, I'm like, because I believe inherently we know what's right and wrong. We it's like in our core, our just like our moral compass. And when she was telling me that, I just remember thinking, that's not like that's a lie. Like in my head, I just remember being so confused. Like, why are you telling me to tell someone that's different, like something different than actually happened? So then that became a pattern as things evolved. And ultimately, when my dad left, there were many times that Child Protective Service, they called it HRS at the time, it's
Wow.
DCF now, would come to our house. We would get like debrief basically before they came on how we needed to respond and what we needed to say and things that we surely wouldn't say, because if we did, we're going to be taken into this, like, it was always this picture of how bad it was going to be if we were taken out of the house, and like other homes, it's going to be
Mm,
worse. So we would, like, it just became normal. It became in not only lying to those adults, but in not even in the sense of lying through your words, but just in your behavior. When I went
mm,
to school, the amount of energy that I had to spend from elementary school all the way through high school, putting on a fake smile and a fake front, for people was exhausting. I would be literally exhausted. And then when I started to like feed into violence, I developed this identity of that dude that would fight anyone, wasn't afraid of anyone, and I found some sort of refuge in that. So that was less work because everyone was focusing on that identity, and then the skater kid, whatever it was, that they weren't even understanding or wanting to talk about what was really going on at home. The same example of getting in trouble in school and just being disrespectful to teachers. It was all deflecting and to talk to your and really just living a lie. I was someone who was broken. I was hurt. I needed
Mm.
love. I needed help. I needed someone to be there for me, and they weren't. And I
Mm.
carry that internally, and the whole face of my earlier years in life really was a lie in a lot of ways, even if I wasn't literally lying with my words. And so that aspect, then the coping mechanisms, I, I got to a point where I could just disappear in the same room
Wow.
of people that I felt like should be loving me and be nice to me. And I would feel more lonely in a room full of people, oftentimes, referring to like home environments and things like that, where uh, I would feel more lonely there with those people than if I just was by myself in some field laying in the grass, disappearing from everything, you know?
Yeah.
So that was the coping, my ability to uh, disassociate my reality with what was going on and just disappear into my head, And I think ultimately that turned into parts of things that I use as a writer, and
Mm.
I'm able to like really follow, like just be, I guess, be in my head, I guess, out. And sometimes I still to this day, not because I'm separating myself, but I'll just disappear into like that space in between people in the room and me and my thoughts, or myself, I guess.
Yeah. Wow. Are there any triggers, even though you're a grown man now and that's all behind you, are there any things that trigger those old emotions and feelings? And I ask that because, just with what I went through as a kid, I had a stepfather who was somewhat abusive towards my mom. There were a few episodes that I recall from being a kid that really have just stuck with me my whole life. And so now I'll be out in public. I'm a grown man now. I'll be out in public and see a guy that looks like him, and
Mm-hmm.
I feel afraid. Not that I know, I know that it's not him, and I know all the facts, but that emotion floods me from when I
Yeah.
was a kid. Are there any things like that that trigger you and bring you back to that state?
Yeah, like when you were talking earlier, you were saying how like these things happen when you're young and they stick with you. And just from a child development standpoint, as you're going through different stages of development, these different things are happening. Even either you're getting like this sense of support and belonging, and healthy attachment relationships are developing with the love and the consistency of that love that you're getting from your
Mm.
caregivers or whatever, or lack of. So when these things happen, or when you witness violence in the home or whatever it is, that's impacting our development. So that's a part of who we are.
Mm.
Over the years, I learned healthy tools to address those situations and those triggers. They would be triggered in like love relationships, or like anytime I was vulnerable. Um, any type of like financial stuff triggers the poverty stuff in
Mm.
me, and this like fear of not knowing if I'm going to eat, or if the water is going to be turned on, or electric is going to be off, whatever it might be. If we're going to get kicked out of a house because we didn't pay the bill for however long, the rent, and then it'd be constantly moving around. Um, so that stuff, will get triggered. But I, I several years ago, I realized I had these tools that I acquired and that I worked on and have to continuously work on. And I just thought, I was actually talking to a therapist about this. It was like an experience with a dating relationship at that time that was hurting me way more than it should have, because it was like triggering that 5-year-old kid, or that 7, 8, 10-year-old kid that just
Wow.
wanted the love of their parents, that didn't get it. And then like ultimately that, let's say, like, you know, what do you call it when you're, I'm going blank, the, like when someone doesn't want you, rejection. So that rejection triggers that sense of abandonment and loss. And I was talking to this, like, there's intellectually, I know that there's no way that this experience can make me feel the way that I'm feeling right now. It's
Right,
not,
right.
it's just like, it doesn't make sense. So, it was basically that trigger of feeling, she was saying in that moment, you're not feeling anything different than that 7-year-old kid that was hurt. You're feeling the pain of that child in that trigger
Wow.
moment, right?
Wow.
So at that point, I went on this journey of writing my sixth book, is Healing the Wounded Child Within. And I was really just diving into each of those triggers and recalling experience in my life where they've been triggered, and with the idea of, I don't want to just deal with this stuff my whole life. And I don't want to have to manage it, because I can manage it. I understand how and I get it, but I want it to be healed. I want those wounds to be healed. It's like if you break your ankle, if you don't get a cast and stuff like that, you could walk again. You could like maybe limp or whatever, but if you heal it properly, you get a cast and you do the proper physical therapy, then you're going to be good. You'll be like you were before. So that's where, that journey was, just to really spend the extra time and attention to facilitate more healing into those wounds, so that I can, not be triggered as, deeply, maybe, or as frequently, I guess. And, because regardless of the work we do or not do, I do believe that, to some extent, we're always being triggered. It's like with the stabbing situation, I've done a lot of work on the PTSD aspect of that.
Wow. Yeah.
But I can still watch something on some sort. I don't watch a lot of violent stuff, because I can see that, and it's not only some dude getting, or female, whoever getting stabbed on a screen. It's something that I experience, and I can like get pulled into that emotion of that very
Right.
easily, which is a trigger. So I try to be really mindful of that stuff.
Yeah. I got in a car accident a few years ago, and I used to play, well, I guess I still have the game, but I played this game, Grand Theft Auto, a lot. And so it's interesting you say that. I know this is a different thing, but it's similar in that I got in the car accident, and I don't know, a few weeks later, I played that game, and you're driving a lot in that game. And the first crash I got in the game, I flinched. I mean, it really brought back a swell of emotions. And so I can totally understand that. You brought it up a little bit, but in terms of your adolescence, how did you interact with women, and were you over sexualized given this volatile relationship your parents had, and what your mom went through dating guys through your adolescence? How did that influence your interaction with the opposite sex?
I definitely looked for some sort of, I don't want to say cure is the wrong word, like missing piece through my dating relationships, or just the, efforts to create relationships, and or whatever, just dating or being single, whatever. With For me, it's the opposite sex, so this could be applicable to any direction of that. Um, but it was trying to fill voids, and try to, maybe find, like, um, it's like replace the love that I didn't get as a child in some way. In other words, I put a lot of pressure on the validation I needed from females.
Wow.
So it would be that, and it would almost be like this thirst to get as much of the attention as I could, which in different phases of my life would result in not being committal, like not being able to commit in long-term relationships, because I just wanted to keep replacing that, like quest to fill some missing void, that I really was for myself. It was just back to those wounds. So that was a journey, and part of that healing the wounded child within was I saw patterns in my relationships that weren't healthy. If from my end specifically, there were there's two sides of everything, but I was more interested in where I was falling short in these failed relationships, what I was doing wrong, or what I needed to fix about myself to be able to address behaviors and relationships that I didn't like insecurities and random feelings of jealousy and all these different things that didn't feel healthy for me, and I knew I didn't like that. So before I met my wife, that was years before that, was really that energy and the attention to heal those wounds that were manifesting themselves into areas of my life, in this case relationships that I wanted to change. And I'm grateful now for where I am and the ability to be in a healthy relationship, because when you don't have models of love in your life, as I'm sure you can relate, when you don't have these healthy models, it's hard to try to make sense out of what a relationship's even supposed to look like. There were times in relationships, I remember there was time when my sister OD'd and passed away, and I was with this person at the time, and the night of the wake and the funeral and stuff, not even the night, like the afternoon, this person was like, yeah, I'm just going to go to this so-and-so's party and go out. Do you want to come? I'm like, no, I don't want to come. My sister just died. Like, I don't even know what's going on right now. I'm dealing with of course, that's like what I felt. And I didn't even know if that was wrong or not. Not to say it was right or wrong, but for me, if it was okay. Like, I had to talk to a mentor about that. Like, should I, because I felt upset. I felt like I wanted this person there for me. And I was like, is that okay to want that in a relationship? Like, want someone to be there for me like this in this time? And this mentor of mine, of course, she was like, yes, absolutely. You deserve, your sister passed away. You deserve to have someone that wants to love you and support you and at least be there for you that day, So yeah, there's just those experiences that I've had to figure out what a healthy relationship looks like for me.
And the last thing I'll ask related to your parents, this would interest me to know. Did you have feelings of resentment, or did, say, your mom, the years that your dad was gone, I'm not sure if he's back, but those formative years that he was gone and it was you and your mom and your brothers and sisters, what was your relationship like with your mom? Did you resent her for, I'm going to make something up here, but did you resent her for failing your dad? Did she resent you for looking like your dad? In terms of resentment, what was there any between you and your mother?
Well, it went through different cycles with which abusive relationships do. There were times where things are really great, and I really worked hard to want to like impress my mom, and like had a lot of respect for her as a single mother to deal with the stuff that she dealt with, the abuse from my father and other men, and hold it together enough to at least try to figure out how to keep us fed in whichever ways that we were able to be fed, and navigate through different welfare systems and all of these things that she was going through as a person. But deep down, there was resentment towards my father from not being around because of some of the things we had to experience because he wasn't around,
Right.
And really being angry and bitter towards him and not understanding how that was possible, because when he was around before my mother and his relationship just like kind of imploded and his addictions and things, there were a lot of great times with my father, and he really loved us, and you could tell. when that was gone, it was really confusing. So there was a lot of like really a lot of anger and resentment towards my father, and it was hard to. It was something I had to work through when he came back into my life later on, in like early 20s. My mother, it was more anger towards her from things that she would do in the present. So it wasn't resentment. It was just like constant disappointment and
Mm.
frustration. The older I got, the more I understood some of how wrong what some of the things she was doing were. Just in the way she would talk to me and treat me and treat the rest of my siblings and I. Um, so that was more just anger towards her, and just kind of navigating through that. So I think that her and I both fell short in a lot of ways on how we treated each other in those years, because I did get to a point where I was showing very little respect to her and her boyfriends, you know.
Wow. Wow. So you had mentioned a little earlier, and I believe I read it in Thank You Skateboarding, and I heard it in the Tommy Zam interview. You had mentioned you were stabbed 9 times, and you were hospitalized for over a week. Uh, was that a wake up call for you? Was that the pivotal moment in your life where you decided this all has to change?
Yeah. Really, yeah. That was like so what was the question? What the if there was a certain moment in that experience that was like the pivotal moment, right?
Yeah, yeah. Was that the time where you thought, I have to change my life?
Yeah, yeah, man. I mean, laying on the hospital bed with doctors and nurses all around you, and you have like tubes in you, and then there's this chaplain that comes in the room to like. At that point, I thought, this dude's gonna pray the last rites. I'm that like
Wow.
I don't. Am I dying? I don't know. And I kept freaking out, asking the doctors, nurses, am I dying? Because before that happened, I had to hold my eyes open before the paramedics came,
Oh my God.
because they started to shut, and I felt like in my
Oh,
mind the loop that was playing in my head. I'm 17, so like it's not like I'm a kid at that point. I have this loop of like, if your eyes close, you're dying. If your eyes close, you're dying. Keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. You have to fight, because I had to fight to breathe. It was getting like short winded from like losing so much blood. So I'm holding my eyes open because they kept fluttering. So as all this is all happening, then I get to the hospital, and they definitely didn't make me feel like everything was cool. There were times before when I'd gone to the hospital right when I got there. I was like, all right, good, I'm good. I'm
mm,
safe. Everything's cool. We showed up in the ambulance. The doors open, and the doctors and nurses were already outside, like working on me, cutting my clothes off as I'm driving, like as they're wheeling me back to the intensive care unit, because the paramedics called ahead. Like, we have a trauma victim. At this point, I didn't know how many times I was stabbed. They didn't know how many times I was stabbed. As they're
wow.
cleaning me up and trying to like figure out where the blood's coming from, and they're turning me over, they're like, we found another one, we found another one, we
Oh
found it.
my
They just
God.
kept adding up. So at this point, the sense of urgency, or the anxiety was peaking. It was really peaking.
Mm,
So what was going on in that moment was, okay, like I could be dying right now. All of a sudden, I had these feelings of, wait, no, 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 I don't want to die. Like, I'm not ready to die. I don't want to die. And I just started saying that out loud, because up into that point in my life, Alan, I didn't care if I lived or died. Like, I got stabbed that night, but it wasn't the first fight that I got into that there were weapons involved. I had been shot
mm,
at several times. I've like heard bullets whiz by my head. I've had guns like pushed up against my forehead, knives pulled out multiple times, like up to my stomach. So I lived to the edge to where I didn't try to keep myself out of those situations. In many ways, I looked for them. And then even in that night, we were out there ready to get into a confrontation. We already had like that vibe of,
wow.
all right, let's go. Like someone. So when I was in that moment of the hospital, I realized pretty much for the first time in my life I can remember, wait, I don't want to die. Like this life, I'm not ready. Like this, I don't want to die. And I felt I'm in there in that moment, and I felt this like, uh, kind of like sitting there in this vulnerable place of this choice: am I dying or not? And all the doctors and nurses there around me, like freaking out, trying to figure out where the blood's coming from and going through their process and protocols. That when the chaplain came in, I thought he was praying over me. That's when I just realized, like, man, I'm. It's not that I don't want to die, and I never didn't want to die before. I just didn't know how to live. And then so he comes up, puts his hand on my head, full on like freak mode at that point. I'm just like, man, this is nuts. All this stuff going on in my head, but I wasn't saying it all out loud. I'm just looking up at all these faces looking down at me with fear in their eyes. And then when he put his hand on my head, he said, everything's going to be okay, son. And he just, it was comfort that came over my whole body. Wow. And I felt like, all right, I'm good. I'm not alone. This first time in my life, I didn't feel alone. I felt like I would be okay. I believed it. I felt it. It wasn't like had to believe his words. It's because when he touched me, it was this feeling that came over me that I knew it was this comfort and this peace. And I lay there for the next 6.5 hours while they still worked on me, the doctors and nurses. And then when they put me into another room for recovery, I just stared outside of the window. I had a friend at the door, a dear friend that was there to help and keep us safe, because we didn't know if these people were coming back, like what was going on, because we feel like they thought we were someone else. And I told him that I didn't want to see anyone. Like, I don't want anyone to come to see me. I just want to sit. I want to be by myself. Of course, I would want to see my mom if she came, but I was there for several days, and she came once. But anyways, so as I'm laying there, I was just looking out of the window, thinking about how I was letting all of the pain and hostility and hurt from childhood control me so much that I almost ended up dead because of it. And I just started to pour my heart into my journals even more than I ever had before, and started to really figure it out. I spent a lot of time alone and just really seeking some answers and some better understandings, and just going on that lifelong journey of healing and transformation from that night. So that was a long answer to your question, but yeah, that was the wake up and shake up, I call it. And not now for the listeners, not to create the illusion that, okay, I leave the hospital and everything's changed about my life. Cause a month after that, I found myself driving across the bridge with a gun in my lap, because we knew where these people were that stabbed us. So we just wanted to get revenge. But then again, as I'm driving across the bridge, more thoughts. At this point, my senses are aware of what's going on. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? I need to stop. So shortly after that night, that's when I really went into recluse mode, and just would skate all the time by myself. And it started to get harder for me. It was harder for me for a long time to be around groups of people and deal with that, social anxiety, PTSD and stuff. So I don't want to paint the picture like that was the switch and then that was it. That was the start.
It was a catalyst.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. It's interesting that you say that, you had this wave of emotions and desire to live when you're sitting there on the bed, or you're in the ambulance, or you're holding your eyes open. And you didn't say this, but I almost get the impression that it's as if, wait, I don't want to die. I haven't even lived yet. You realize I haven't loved yet. I haven't had certain experiences and emotions yet. Wait, I'm not ready to die for that reason. I haven't even lived yet. And it makes sense to me that you wouldn't just flip the coin and all of a sudden you're a perfect human being after that. But it does sound like that was a beginning, a new beginning. You hit a low. It was a very low point, and you can only go up from there. And it seems like you're still going up from that day. So what can I say? I'm sorry that happened to you. and hindsight is
But
2020.
yeah, man,
Yeah.
and you know what? I have the opportunity to do different talks in like schools and stuff, and young people always ask me, "Do you have any regrets or anything, or would you change anything?" And I always tell them I would never change anything that I've gone through and what I've experienced because it's helped make me who I am today. What I would change, however, is spending, like you were saying in that moment where you were talking about, like, I haven't even lived yet and I haven't loved and all the parts. I totally get that because the parts I would change is spending so many of my years of my life, young years of my life, so trapped in that anger and that like bitterness and that hurt and that in like letting that manifest itself into violence in the times that I held on to that identity of that person that was really just communicating to the world that they were hurt, but I was doing it through hurting other people, like that. That's what I would change. And beyond the behaviors, just the feeling and the years that it robbed from my life. So at any point in our life, it's always important to acknowledge those things that may be keeping us from that experience in life, if you will, like you were mentioning. And speaking to that in regards to resentment and bitterness and stuff that we hold. And I always tell people forgiveness, because I had to forgive my mother and my father. It's not about saying that they were right or forgetting things that happened. It's forgiveness is for yourself, and releasing your heart to live more freely. So that's the stuff that I would change if I could, is starting to work on myself sooner and not needing to be stabbed 9 times to realize that I am valued and I'm important and I deserve to be here. And it's important to appreciate life and the gift that it is every moment. Because before that happened that night, it was just another day. I was going through my life, like thinking about what I was doing tomorrow, and things changed they changed really fast.
Wow. Well, you've come so far from that time. And the topic of the hour, of course, is your latest book, Thank You Skateboarding. And like I said earlier, I really enjoyed it. And what it is to me is a love letter to skateboarding. That's really what it is. I was finding myself being able to relate to so much of what you were writing about. And I'll pose this, I'll give you a scenario and you can respond to it. Imagine you're in a grocery store in line and the person ahead of you is talking about somebody in another line. The person ahead of you is saying, "Oh my God, look at that guy over there. He's dirty. He has holes in his shoes. He's soaked in sweat. This animal has some nerve to be in here with that skateboard." I don't know that you would respond to that in person, but if you had an opportunity to respond, what would you say to that person?
Wow, man. It's and thank you for bringing that up. Is I would tell them what they really see is dedication, perseverance, hard work, overcoming fears that are even hard to comprehend. And what's also mixed in those holy shoes and those dirty clothes is the ability and opportunity to share a love with other people that love the same thing, and a sense of community and relationship to something so amazing. So there's so many stories that those dirty clothes stand to share, and also what they're creating is memories that will continue to be fruit for their life for the rest of it.
Do you think that, I've been skating for, let's see, I'm 30 years old now, and I must have started when I was 11 or 12 off and on. And I'm getting older now, and I find, I'll have a session and my knee starts hurting or my ankles aren't as strong as they used to be. And, after a session, they kind of ache a little bit. Um, is it worth it? Do you think it's worth it?
1000%. Like, who says that on the Nine Club? Is it Justin? Is that his thing? 1000, or is that the other two? I forget. Anyways, one of them says it. But yeah, it's worth it, man. I'm 44 now, and I deal with all kinds of aches and pains, and like I'm like it hurts to skate. There's no other way to do it. There's a lot of things I have to do outside of skateboarding to help me feel better when I skate. But there's so much good that comes out of it in so many different ways in so many aspects of your life that I believe, it's more than worth it. It's definitely, it pays dividends in your life compared to maybe the pain and hurt that you might feel because of it, especially as you get older, and even if I always tell people, even if you're not trying to do tricks or not putting yourself in any risk, you want to try to really minimize how much you might fall or whatever. Even if you're just cruising and enjoying being on the board, it's worth getting out there. And then, find your little measures of progression. If you want a manual from one crack to the next, manual from one crack to the next, try to do 2 or 3 next time. But it's just about being on the board. Ultimately, that is so important and worth whatever it takes for you to be able to get that time on the board. I think it's all worth it.
What would you say to a parent? And I ask this question. I don't have kids yet. I don't know that you have kids, but maybe you could still talk to this point.
I have one son, and that's a whole nother conversation about triggers and stuff. Like, he's 3 months old right now. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it definitely brought up all kinds of childhood.
Oh, wow. Oh my God.
Like, work through and navigate,
Oh my God.
So yeah, your question, what were you saying?
I was going to ask, for example, I have a nephew and I've taken him to the skate park, but I don't know what it is about me, but not that I hover over him, but I am terrified of him getting hurt. I mean, mind you, he can barely stand on the skateboard. It's not like he's trying to tray flip a 5-stair or something. I am terrified of him falling over, breaking his ankle, breaking his arm, from slipping out. What would you tell a parent, or how would you console or soothe those fears of somebody who's afraid their kid is going to get hurt on a skateboard?
First, I would say chances are, if your kid is skateboarding, they will get hurt. That's just going to be part of it. But on the upside of that, the bright side of it, if you will, whatever pain that they experience because of the fall they might take, it will help them grow more as an individual in different aspects of life, which will also manifest in their ability to perform in school and their ability to do other things in their life. Also, overcoming those fears after they fall, to keep up, to get up, or to go back and do that again, develops confidence in them. Anything healthy that you would like to see your child develop as a person in regards to individuality, creativity, identity, perseverance, a positive mindset, all these different things, I believe skateboarding helps cultivate it. So having said that, if they do get hurt, or when they do get hurt, which they will if they are trying to actually skate and progress and learn tricks, it's worth it. And I would say, be at peace with that, and knowing that, and I would also encourage parents, or, uncles as well, to think about the aunts, whoever, brothers, sisters, older brothers, sisters, like, just think about all of the times that you fell and got hurt in your life, whether you skateboarded or not. And when you look back on that, I'm sure you can notice that you probably got something out of it. You probably learned something out of it, or maybe you learned that you didn't want to do something, and then that redirected you into something else. It's not a bad
Mm.
thing necessarily to get hurt, because also you're pushing your boundaries of comfort, and you want to cultivate young people to feel encouraged and confident to push their boundaries of comfort, because if we get caught in complacency, that manifests in other ways in our life as a young person and an adult. So
Wow.
I say go for it, and let them go, let them just get hurt and fall down, and develop the things that they will develop from being able to work through something like that.
There's one major topic I want to get into, but I just can't help but ask you a follow-up question to something you said earlier. You have a newborn baby, basically 3 months old. What's going through your mind? I mean, do you see this baby? I mean, I'm making this up here, but I'm just curious about the feelings and emotions you're getting. Do you look at your baby and you're thinking, my God, I'm afraid to touch it. I don't want to spoil my baby because of how damaged I was as a kid. I don't want that to transfer onto him somehow or her somehow. Not that I think that's the case, but do you have these weird, strange feelings that are resurfacing because you were once a baby and you know what you went through yourself?
Yeah, there's definitely some like weird things triggering where I think maybe ways that I was treated as an infant that weren't healthy, and it turns out that my mom thought that I was an ugly baby, I guess, and didn't really want me.
Wow.
Which I feel now like I've had some weird, deep triggers that I've never experienced before, that I couldn't experience without having this close encounter with a baby, it being my wife and I's child. So it was weird, like where that kind of those things are coming up, where I think that there was some pain, caused, because from infancy through 18 months is really when we're developing ourselves, like this healthy like attachment relationships and like that sense of comfort, knowing where our needs are going to be met and all these things. So I think there was some of that missing. But anyways, it's more though, so that it's just more motivation for me to break the cycles. And that's been part of my motivation, is not wanting to repeat the cycles, and just kind of, put my hand up against statistics and what statistics may suggest that my life would end up like, and which I've actually seen play out in my family in itself. So I've always been motivated to break that cycle. And this child is this person, this being, this human, is not like, I'm not trying to put any of my stuff on it of like, I need, like, this is my opportunity to whatever. It's just, it's my responsibility to love and nurture him to my fullest ability, and raise him up to be the best person he can be. So it's really an honor for me to give fully to him in ways that a lot of people don't get given to in their life, in regards to love and support and acknowledgement. Having said that, of course, there's those lingering fears of, I don't want to fail as a father. I don't want to repeat the cycles. They're there. Like, there's that chatter that comes up of just not wanting to be that, but I know that I won't. It's just chatter in my mind that's like from previous experience or whatever, things that people have told me. But I know it's like I've done enough work on myself, and I'm healthy enough emotionally and mentally to like be confident that those shortcomings and anything that might hurt him that I would do is not an option.
Yeah, you're going to hit it out of the park, man. I'm sure you know that. I get that sense, and it's probably good that you're not that those feelings are surfacing, but that you have an awareness of this, of the system that is your life. But I fully expect you to hit it out of the park. There's this one last topic I want to bring up that I am just fascinated with. I think it's what keeps me coming back to skateboarding. Other than the feeling of landing a trick, when I land a trick, I feel like I'm making a free throw on a basketball court.
Dude,
But
it's
there's
nothing like it, man. It doesn't matter what someone does for the first time. If they drop in on a 2-foot quarter pipe or they learn to ollie up a curb, whatever. It's the feeling that you see it in the face. It's the body language, everything that it just like, nothing. Go ahead. I'm sorry. There's nothing like that feeling now, man.
No, you're absolutely right. The main topic that I want to get into is community. But now that you mentioned what you just mentioned, I think you had said it actually maybe in the Tommy Zam interview. I'm not sure where maybe I heard you say this, but there's this feeling that I get at the skate park, and it actually does tie into the topic of community. But even just yesterday when I was at the skate park, this guy was he was launching out of like a kicker, or it was like a bowl really without it coping. He was launching out of it and doing this massive tray flip. And he did not look like he was going to do it. I really, frankly, I can be a little pessimistic sometimes. And
I get it. I mean, you see someone try, so I get it. Like, you're kind of like, dude, I'm no man. That doesn't even seem close.
Right, exactly. But the guy lands it. He stomps it after like 20 tries. And, I'm like, dude, like you did. I actually said it to him. I was like, you did that for all of us. That was sort of a moment that we all got to share. And your success is our success. Something in my brain was triggered, like, wow, I did that almost. You take possession as a community in a way, like in a good way, where I went home feeling good. And I appreciate that you point those sort of things out in your book and in your conversations with people. What do you get out of the sense of community from skating when you go to the skate park or you run up on a crew just kind of skating a curb or something? What do you get out of those interactions?
I mean, you get love, you get support, you get seen. At the core of all of us, we just want to be acknowledged. We want to be validated. We want to be appreciated. We want to be seen. We want to be loved, supported, cared for. And I think that happens consistently over and over again throughout any skate session. It's like constant encouragement of each other. Even if you're it doesn't matter what someone's trying. We all know what it takes to skate. If we're out there skating, we all know the pain. Everyone's overcoming their own fears and pushing their own boundaries of comfort. And it's always respected and appreciated. And that feels good. It feels good to all of us. I think that not only can we give that support to someone, but we're also receiving it. Even if we don't land it, it's the process. Like that dude you're talking about, trying to think. Sometimes, you're like, oh man, that's it seems far away, but then eventually people work out the problems. They figure out their body, what they need to do, and it's like solving a problem. Then they do and they get it. But the journey of it, everyone's there with them, and like you said, it's everyone's success. That's why I think we all cheer, and that's why you watch skate videos where you have 10 people that come running into the frame after someone lands a trick they might have been battling for hours on multiple occasions. And there have been times where I've wanted to leave the skate park, let's say, for example, at 12, and I'm there another 2 hours watching someone battle something because I'm in the battle. Like, I wanted you to do it as much as if I was doing it myself. Like, I want this to happen for you. I want it to happen for us. And it's that sense of camaraderie that you feel when someone does overcome that battle and win, or even if they don't, just the effort itself, the tenaciousness that they display to continue to try over and over again, fall over and over and over again, and keep going. I feel like it's impossible not to respect that. So what do I get out of it, man? I get so much. I even talking about the baby situation and me dealing with pressures and anxiety from that. Once again in my life, skateboarding proves to be such a beautiful and healthy outlet to help me process things in my life, and then I get to share it with people that there's nothing but love and respect for out there skating, even if it's someone at one time.
I am just so fascinated by what I see at the skate park. Even,
It's
I mean,
amazing.
we're using this tool. It's a skateboard. It's an object. We're expressing ourselves with this tool, and it's actually really interesting to talk to you about it because you told us about your experience of being, for lack of better terms, let's just say a troubled kid. Just having gone through all the experiences you went through and then having this tool at your disposal to express yourself in a positive and productive way, it makes me really, I'm fascinated with sociology and philosophy and psychology, and I feel like
Likewise.
you really see that at the skate park. I'll give you a couple examples. You see issues with dominance. You see issues of envy and submissiveness and timidness. For example, I've rolled up to a skate park plenty of times. Uh, how can I put this? I may look like I'm better than I am. Like, oh, this guy, oh, he looks like he's really good. And I'm actually like not that great. So I'll pull up to a skate park and immediately guys are like tray flipping in front of me and stomping, these advanced tricks. And then immediately as soon as I roll up, and then they notice that I'm not that good, and then they chill out. It's like, oh, I don't have to impress this guy. So I just notice all these weird social dynamics at the skate park. And I wonder, do you have a view of the skate community? Do you have maybe a too rosy of a view of what a skate community is?
No, I mean, there's definitely that, and you have to do, we all have egos, we kind of feel like sometimes people want to flex their flex basically. And there were phases in my life where I was part of that scene, and like I would come up and I was younger and I felt like there was a certain type of it's identity. If you're like
Mm,
identified as a shredder and you have a lot of tricks, maybe you're sponsored or what. Like I know for me, when I had it's like different sponsors, it was that pressure of people. They knew I was skating, I felt like I had to live up to something. And then you kind of, if someone that you didn't know comes up and they start skating, then you kind
right,
of,
right.
you're both sort of like, you're competing with each other in a weird way.
Mm,
But at the same time, even if that would happen, and I know that I see it now, and I obviously I don't get pulled into it now, I'm not in that realm, but I just try to respect it, and I try to like cheer and acknowledge and validate. But ultimately what it is, if say that sort of vibe is happening with people, um, even if it is, there's still respect. Like
mm, mm.
there's not like, dude, get off my block, man. I mean, like it's not like someone's trying to fight you because they're doing a trick in front of you or you're doing a trick in front of them. It's just you're like, it's a dance. It's like kind of like a break dance. You want to get the dance floor, you have the dance floor, you want to put down some moves. So at the end of the day, when everyone's sitting down, you're laughing, you're chilling. Like even if there's a weird vibe, because I see it with young shredders like coming up and whatever, and I love it. I love all the young people that just explode tricks on when they show up. But so I don't have a like a rosy view that there's not weird dynamics in the skate
Mm,
community, because there are. There's competitive nature. It's a very competitive sport in different levels because you're competing with yourself, and then you start to like have that show in other people, and some compete, some don't, and some are pushing for that recognition and trying to get sponsored. They want to be seen. All so there's different parts of that. But would I say they're bad or would I say they're wrong? As long as they're not hurting anyone, as long as everyone is always taking the time to cheer on the person who is learning to ollie or to drop in and still not forgetting where you come from, then I'm all for it, right?
mm,
I respect it, and uh, and I can acknowledge that we're all humans and we deal with different insecurities and different needs to get validated, and also um, the ego, and there's different things that play
mm.
a part into it. But again, ultimately, I think none of it's out of malice and trying to hurt anyone. Just trying to skate and show what they can show what they have sometimes.
What does it feel like when you land a trick and you hear behind you, or you see to your side and you hear someone go, you? What does it feel like when that happens? When you land a trick and you get that response?
It's like what you're feeling internally being reinforced externally. So it's like joining forces, what you feel while you're rolling away, and their excitement is like it's just it's like this the feeling, and intensifies the feeling you already have inside. It's not like, oh yeah, they just clap for me. It's just like, yeah, you feel it too. We feel it together, kind of, at least in my mind. So it feels good, man. It always feels good, and it feels good to cheer for people, man. I'm kind of that guy at the skate park that's always hyped on anyone doing anything, just because I love to see people get stoked on skating, and and enjoying it. Like, no matter if they're doing like a big spin back tail down the ledge on the stairs, or they're learning the ollie manual, the mani pad, I get stoked on it.
Wow. Ricky Roberts III, it's been really great talking to you. I thoroughly enjoyed your book, Thank You Skateboarding. I'm going to have to, I'm really interested in your other books too. I may have to start with Healing. I forget what it's called, Healing the Wounded Child.
Yeah, Healing the Wounded Child Dead, man. That's a good one. It's kind of a workbook setup that I did in that one. So I'm stoked on it.
There's no way I could possibly capture you in a time frame of an hour. I think you did shine your light throughout this. I'll ask you just one more question. You can answer it any way you like. Ricky Roberts III, who the hell are you?
Oh man, a work in progress, man. A work in progress until the day I die.